explore. And your second point, which is, well, we'll come back, audience participation, I think this is key. Again, coming back to The Matrix. When The Matrix came out, believe this or not, there was no Facebook, there was no Twitter, there were no tools that could allow you to share that enthusiasm. The same thing with Star Wars. It's only become something that's been democratized very recently. And that, I think, you've put your finger on it, it's really, really important for this sort of initiative.
Also, the cool thing about the internet and social networks is it's an almost instantaneous platform for you to get user feedback, also comments, and also build up a fan base. But making a movie takes a long time. So if you do it as an afterthought, if you allow people to sort of become fanboys after they've seen the film and say, wow, that is great, you've almost already missed the boat there. So perhaps there's a way for us to stop thinking of multi-platform as a way of simultaneously releasing everything. I need to make the game and the movie and the comic books and everything come out at approximately the same time because it all promotes one another. How about you sort of make this really, really high quality thing in one of those mediums first, enough to build up a core audience of people that will be evangelists for how good it is or might be, and that really start sort of spreading the word amongst themselves, and then start building up that fan base and that social community while you are developing or producing and shooting the film, or working on the big-ass video game. Perhaps in the meantime you can release some mobile projects that gradually get the word out, but also are really awesome standalone games within the universe that you're constructing. So the cool thing now is, like, we don't have to think like big studios always do. We have to do a global simultaneous release. We have to release everything across all the different platforms all at the same time. The budgets of that and the management of that would be insane, and you would miss out on one key thing that I think that I want to boil down to. I think we're both talking about today is that ultimately you need one creative vision behind these things, and you probably need that one multi-platform creator, that one transmedia person that can not just manage all these other creatives that will obviously work on these projects, but also has a vision that works across all these, that understands the rules of games, and what makes a good game, that understands what makes a good movie. And I don't think we've seen those people yet. I don't think we've, I think Vin Diesel almost is one of the first people, oddly enough, with Chronicles of Riddick. I don't know if there are any gamers in the room, but Chronicles of Riddick was a fantastic video game. It was a kind of a movie, but the game was fantastic. And he's a guy who was a big Hollywood star at the time, still is obviously, who took the time to fly out to Sweden where the game was being developed, to meet with the game creators, to pat them on the back and go like, guys, this is awesome. Like, how about, what if you just, you could just wring a guy's neck from behind and stuff and blah, blah, blah. They said, can we film you and take, and do this and use this as reference? Like, yeah, sure. So he started hanging out gradually with his game. He cared. He gave a shit. And that is incredible. He's a guy who was just as passionate about the filmmaking side of it as the game side of it. And that generation has only now begun to exist. So I think we need to transmedia people to create transmedia projects.
You had a question? Yeah, I was wondering because Star Wars only eventually graduated into becoming a transmedia experience. It started out as a movie, and then with action figures and comics and whatever. And you're also saying now, okay, the main strategy should be to build this one big product to start off your story with. But my first suggestion would have been Pokemon, to say what is a original transmedia storyline, where you have the TV series, the trading cards, the Game Boy games, I don't know what else they grew out in Japan, where it's this whole universe in parallel developing around all these media.
They didn't start out with the TV series though.
Yes, it was the same time they grew out the TV series and the card game and the Game Boy.
Pokemon's a brilliant example of a pure transmedia creative project.
Yeah.
What I love about Pokemon is that they've understood the interactivity part completely. So they're appealing to children with very interactive, very deep worlds and characters and populations, but also in terms of the game session, in terms of the use of the property. It's very short sessions. It's bite-sized sessions. And this is a really interesting entry point into that audience. They've understood that kids don't necessarily want to play an alternate reality game. They don't want to go into the source code of your website. They don't want to do all of this work just to understand your world, your property. They want to have fun in short bursts with the elements that makes your world so unique. So I love Pokemon as a transmedia project. I think it's a brilliant example. And coming back to Star Wars, it very quickly, it went from being just licensing toys and things like that to also having a big transmedia element to it, with books coming out to flesh out the universe. If you remember, when I was a kid, one of the favorite things I had was a book that showed me the blueprints of all of the technical specs of the world. So the Death Star as a blueprint, so I could explore that on my own time. And that's purely transmedia.
So, I think there's another question. Yes?
Just wondering, we're talking about many examples with Star Wars, the Mavericks, or Pokemon. But all of those examples are more in the genre of, let's say, fantasy, science fiction, or action. So I was wondering, do you have any examples, or could you think of anything in different genres? For example, drama, or thriller, or anything like that?
I was helping a film, Peter and the Wolf Breakthrough Films. It started out as a simple short. It turned out into a €5 million production because it was the most expensive, I think, per minute stop motion film ever made in Europe. It was lots of hard work, lots of sweat, and then all of a sudden we were all faced with the dreadful realization: we will never make this money back. Oh my God, what have we created? It's a monster. But then at the same time, you have the gorgeous music of Prokofiev. You have one of the most classic, timeless stories of all time. And you're tapping into audiences that aren't necessarily only going to want to watch this on a small screen or even on the big screen. We did a premiere at the Royal Albert Hall or at the Hollywood Bowl, where the film was actually being shown on a big screen and accompanied by a live orchestra. Peter and Wolf also became a live show with puppets at the Royal Festival Hall, and then gradually this thing has sort of, this tiny little film has turned into a real transmedia project. The trans, or the other media, happens not to be digital in this case, and I think that's also very exciting, to start thinking about the real world and real spaces and real people that you can interact with live. And here's guy called Julian wants to say something.
But Peter and the Wolf is still a fantasy property.
Yeah.
I think your question is super interesting because I've only thought of transmedia in terms of entertainment. Last week I went to a conference where a journalist presented the challenge of social responsibility to bring up the injustices of information delivery, journalists being killed around the world, to stop that news coming out. And his challenge to us was, how could you treat this as an interactive experience, to bring awareness? And I don't have the answers to that, but it's something that I'm thinking about. Okay, how could we bring some sort of transmedia initiative to bring serious games to the forefront, if you will? But your point about drama is in all of these properties. Pokemon is extremely dramatic. If you lose one of your creatures that you've been caring for the last 3 months, it's very dramatic. I don't know if you've got children, but it's very dramatic. Yes?
Hello, my name is Baron, and I'm
Hello.
currently studying cross-media and interactive media at the Film Academy in Ludwigsburg. And there's a lot of talk going on about how to create sort of an IP that is, in the beginning, detached from all the formats in media. So there's not just like focusing on a game or a movie or a comic book, and what procedures can one like take to create such an IP? And this is the first question. Are there some sort of, I'd say, like a creative kernel or like a basis that will somehow connect to each and every one of us, not depending on the media? If it's a game or a movie, something like Star Wars with the Jedi Knights did and that kind of stuff. And the second question would be, is there some sort of IP testing before you go into the different media? Like Assassin's Creed was there like some sort of test that showed the graphics of the main character and the story and that kind of stuff before you actually developed or started to develop the first prototype?
So I'll answer the second question.
Okay. I'll try and remember the first one.
Yeah, I can just. Like,
we'll do a recap afterwards. But in terms of testing for these IPs, all the big companies test internally and externally big properties. So Assassin's Creed or the next Assassin's Creed will be tested. It's important to have that feedback. It's important to know what people think on a very early level. But I don't think it's the be-all and end-all. I think that we're seeing a new model today which ties into audience interaction, where you'll be able to release something and tailor it. We're using participants' feedback. A lot of I've lived in China for the last 5 years, and the video game industry there is very, very different. They release a property and then continue working on it post-launch, which is not something that the Western world did 5 years ago. They do it more and more now. But one of my best friends in China is a game designer who took his game from 50,000 people playing per day to 400,000 people playing per day by tweaking little things, by tweaking the design, the artistic direction, the items for sale, that type of thing. So you can imagine that even for a story-based property or an intellectual property that has a transmedia aspect to it, you could refine the vision with that sort of approach. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, because like it's something that goes back and forth, and you're always in connection with your audience through Facebook, maybe, and social networks. And
the point after there comes, okay, when is it your creator's vision, and when is it the vision of the mass? And that's something I hope we'll touch upon, but basically with a Star Wars or a Pokemon or an Assassin's Creed, you're developing a world that's very strong, but you're giving tools to consumers around that world to create their own fantasies within it. So they're not changing the nature of what you've created. So your iconic elements stay the same. And that's the ideal middle ground that you're aiming for.
That applies mainly to, I would say, mainstream and projects that are big enough to have that outreach and to get you that user feedback that you need in order to improve and to change things. But also, you know, when you have different platforms and you're going to have to work with other people, you can't just be a one-man band. Well, you can probably, but it's probably healthy for your mind to work with great game designers on the game side and great programmers and a great concept artist on the movie side and really good script developers and et cetera, is that those people also naturally have that same effect for you as the crowdsourcing of ideas would as well. You need to, I mean, to answer your first question, I think you need to surround yourself with people that are the best at those specific fields, and they will not necessarily have the egos where they have to go, I have to be in charge of my own thing, and I cannot deal with your feedback. But that they will stick to really making a great game, a great movie, a great book, whatever it is. But they will constantly constantly inform each other, and constantly communicate, and constantly exchange ideas. It is very, very, very difficult to manage, though, and that's why we haven't seen many examples of that being done yet, I think. Because it's very difficult to manage these creative egos, and it's also very, very difficult to fund it. That to me is a huge problem because we don't have successful examples enough, or actually we don't have any in recent years where we can actually go to investors, unless we are Ubisoft and we have our own internal money to go, you know what, I'm doing this transmedia project. This is how it works. It's going to be this awesome game, this awesome movie. People have hard enough times financing a film, you know. So to me, that is the biggest challenge. And another thing that I was just going to throw it out there because I would forget it otherwise is, and this will sound really lame, but